At Capella University, education is as smart as the world around us. With the FlexPath format, you can take classes at your own pace, set your own deadlines, and even leverage your previous experience to move faster. Now that's smart. Learn more at capella.edu.
Right Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Right Night, where we do a coffee chat writers roundtable style podcast and a few things to know about the show. We are an adult show with adult language, adult topics, adult humor, and that will slip in on occasion, though we try to keep it pretty clean just in general for this. What else we got? We need to know what our viewers here on the live stream where we record this are reading, writing, or what creative thing are you using as an outlet right now. And don't forget, even you folks listening on the podcast, even though you're not here, we want to hear from you. And you could email us at rightnightshow@gmail.com. That's Right Night, just like the show is spelled on the podcast. So feel free to drop us a line with your thoughts on a topic, something you'd like to hear us talk about, or even birthday wishes and special messages to those close to you. Now, I am Travis I. Sivart. My latest book that I'm working on is Silver and Smith Chronicles Book 2, Silver and Smith and the Doppelganger's Gate. And here in my hands is Silver and Smith and the Jazir's Light, which is Book 1 of the Silver and Smith Chronicles, with a new cover that's now out, not the one I'm holding in my hand, but one that's much more cyberpunky, if you will.
Are you saying that the current one is limited edition and they should buy it now?
They can't. I have a few copies left in the back room here, but yeah, it's no longer available with that cover. So anybody who got it there, which is nobody, because frankly the original cover sold 0. But book 1 is out. Book 2 should be out shortly, and you can find my books at bit.ly/Travis Books. That's bit.ly/Travis Books. And let's have Aaron introduce himself. Where can they find your books, Aaron?
They can find my books at bit.ly, Aaron Kennedy. Bit.ly Aaron.
On the curse.
No, I got my name right.
bit.ly/Aaron Kennedy.
Yes, me. Get it at Amazon. Just look me up. That's where you get it. Hey, I've been a technical writer for 25 years. Been published in the Army. Yeah, that's right. You know what? I don't care if they get it or not.
I like them to work. It makes them more invested.
I've been published in the Army Times, Army University Press, author of Persona Non Grata, first of the books in the Ships of the Valor series.
Good book.
Yeah, thank you. It has a review, singular, from my mom. I don't know. It's also got Travis's review.
That's right.
As I see him stroking the cat, it just looks like he's sitting there rubbing his belly.
Yes, excellent.
Excellent. Yes. Currently working on the Icarus Black book series set in the same universe. I believe Michael is currently reading Persona Non Grata. He has stated that he has read the first page. He hasn't thrown the book across the room yet. So
we don't know
there.
It will do.
It will do. Yes.
It's really good. It's really good.
Michael.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
I know who I am.
My name is Michael Thompson. I'm an independent author and illustrator. And one of my books is Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy set on the high seas.
And your name, sir?
It's got sea monsters, epic urban legends that few have beheld, but there's one gallant fisherman who happens to have seen them all, Winslow Hoffner, the titular character. Check it out on my website, michaelthompsonbooks.com. That's MICHAELTHOMPSON books.com.
Yay!
Holy shit! All right, go get yourself a cookie.
Listen to that crowd go
Walk it
wild.
off. Walk it off.
They're all so happy that you got it. They're all applauding and cheering. It's amazing.
Thank you, everyone who purchased books since last week. You paid for my public speaking
Classes.
I almost said episodes. Maybe I need a few more classes. So definitely check out my website and help me learn to talk good. No, thank you, everyone. I'm real happy to be here. Excited to talk about structuring.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about this week. That's a great segue there. I want to talk about structuring your story and outlining beat sheets and planning. These things that some people do, some people don't. Some people do it way too much. Other people do it a little bit. And in my latest book that I'm writing, which is Silver and Smith and the Doppelganger's Gate, Book 2 of Silver and Smith Chronicles, I went and grabbed my beat sheet that I haven't really... Oh, well, look at that, Tracy.
Woo! Wow.
Spacey Tracy is here cheered.
Thank you.
X300.
There we go. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate that.
Wow.
She's our big cheerer. As in she cheers big, not that she is... Let's move on. It's right, where was I? Structure.
Doppelganger's Gate.
I pulled out a beat sheet this time, which I've long been familiar with beat sheets. For those of you that aren't familiar with beat sheets are basically something they use in movies for pacing and to make sure you get all the high and low points that you expect in a book or movie. And some writers use them, some don't. And I went and grabbed my beat sheet today and rewrote it and inserted the plot points that I want to hit, which normally I have the concept in mind, but I don't do it. But I found in the last book, Portals Book 3, I had a really hard time with the opening, the first act, and the closing, the third act. And I thought, well, maybe if I structure this more, when I have those points with all the other life stress going on, I'll be able to keep going better when I'm writing.
Yeah.
So what about you guys? Pantsing versus planning? What do you do?
I had a similar thing happen when I was writing Winslow 2, which I just finished. I had a great conversation with my editor today, and I'm real excited. It's going to come out in the next month, I believe. But I had a very unusual structure for the second Winslow book because it was alinear, and I've mentioned this in other episodes. It's an alinear structure. We dive in and out of the past, present, and to do that, I had to sort of come up with, because you have sort of the visual of like these important things. Like Aaron talks about these milestones that he wants to hit within Icarus Black, or these like important moments, and so and I knew all those, but the structure of the story itself, the way it weaves through time, I had to do a beat sheet for the first time, and really? I think I might have learned that term from you and maybe Elizabeth. I might have heard her talking about it, Pickle Lady, being that she writes film, and I studied it and I thought it was interesting, and so I put those major story beats on index cards, and I knew these had to appear, but in what order was important, and because the order in which you tell it is just as important. It is. To have the impact that it needs to have. So I put them on little index cards. I mean, I'm calling them index cards, but I just ripped up paper. It was it was very ridiculous. But and then
Redonkulous. There's a donkey involved.
Redonkulous, yes. And then I had them, and then I stacked them, and that helped me get a sense of achieving that impact that I wanted to achieve. So in the second Winslow book, the beat sheet really helped, those story beats. And I had also kind of seen, I had seen it, Vince Gilligan. There was this little featurette where he was talking about Better Call Saul. Right. And he had a corkboard where he had the story beats, and he had them organized like this. And so these little pieces of paper that had these important moments that would show up. And I was like, so that visually was what sort of like sparked the idea, and it helped a lot.
The card thing is something, I don't know if it was separate from a beat sheet concept, but yeah, it's essentially the same thing, except it's kind of storyboarding your book. If we've ever watched a making of an animated movie, you'll see the little drawings, and they have the little drawings of each scene, and they'll have the scenes mapped out with little cards or Post-it notes on a board. And this
I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think he called it like breaking the story. So I don't know if it would be, I guess maybe that's a truncation of like a breakdown or something, but like a story breakdown. But yeah, he called it breaking the story was the verb that he used.
Okay. So do you think you're going to end up using this in other books where you might not have before?
I mean, it's good to have it in the at the ready in case I need it.
That's something.
And so, and so I have it there, and I know that I can go to it in case I run into this similar problem. And I think, or this similar puzzle, and it was very much like a puzzle because I had the pieces. It's just where in what way do they align? And that's what I was trying to solve.
Whether I outline or anything, and usually my normal structure is basically 1 to 3 sentences for each chapter, and I aim for a certain word count per chapter for pacing's sake, and I don't mind going over it. I just don't like going under it. But whenever I have the outline or plots or points set in front of me, or even with the beat sheet that I did, I plan for my characters to break it. And I am ready for them to move differently than I had planned, because as you're writing, your story opens, your characters do other things, a great idea comes to you, however you want to look at it. And I'm ready for that. And I'm ready to restructure as that happens. And that's something I think a lot of people who are pantsers don't realize is you can plan, and then you can break your plan. And you can restructure afterwards. And that's very important. Don't get caught in your own box. Don't get caught on your rails. Go ahead and be ready to flip the script and go in a different direction. Aaron?
You could write yourself into a corner.
Yeah. Which I did.
And I've done that.
See, I did that with a short story in talent agency. And the way I got out of it is if I went to my group of tabletop role players, my D&D group, or whatever game I was playing at the time, how would they get out of this? What crazy ideas would they come up with that would be viable without just being ex deus machina?
Well, you guys have seen this series 24, right?
Yes,
I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, at the very beginning of season 1, Jack Bauer goes into his boss's office and shoots him with a tranq gun, and then has one episode to basically blackmail his boss. And that's one of those things you're like, oh, that's not something that's expected. That's a great off-the-rails thing. What did you do? I shot him with a tranq gun, and then he's got to get his buddies to come up with information to blackmail him in order to friggin' break this thing. And it's almost like the writers wrote themselves into a corner, and they had to come up with something else.
Right.
But it's something different. It was something it's an unexpected twist early on in the season, and you pulled yourself right out of it. The structure immediately changes. Instead of the typical, I need your badge and your gun scene that you're kind of expecting when he goes in there, you've now got we don't have he's going to get suspended, or I've got this ally. He's now got a resolution that's completely different, and
you're immediately in a real interesting situation.
Exactly. Jim Butcher talks about this. There's 3 ways to end a scene: resolution as expected, resolution not as expected, or as expected but in a different way.
Yeah.
So you walk into the scene and you're like, okay, well, as expected is no fun.
Right.
Right.
as the character expects, or not as the character expects, just basically as a complete conflict, also not as fun. So you try to aim for the middle one.
Yeah. And I like what you said, Travis, about like leaving room for your characters to surprise you. Right. And I think that's so important, to surrender to the story and
it is
let those avenues open up.
If they can surprise you, they can surprise your readers. And I have read so many books where I'm just like, I can just tell you what's coming up. I can tell you the next sentence. I've watched movies where I can quote it when I've never seen it. I can just say the words right along with them. And I love it when I'm sitting there and I quote the next line and I get it wrong. I'm like, all right, good for these writers.
But the ever famous The Butler did it.
Well, the butler did the maid, so he wasn't in the room.
Well, you walk into the mystery and the butler did it. It's freaking it's the classic. Whereas you find out, this is a great twist.
Right.
We want that.
Yeah.
By the way, Wordowin says, I do planning for world building, mostly pantsing for story writing. And when I structure, when I plan, it's as I think Michael mentioned earlier, I have points in the story that I know have to hit, or elements that I want to bring out, or plots that I want to bring to light. But how they get from here to here, that's all pantsing. I don't super structure everything. Clue, says Wordowin. Yes. Clue. Great movie if you guys haven't seen it. Really worth seeing.
Yeah, I never saw it.
What? It's on Amazon Prime. Watch it now. You know what? Log off. Watch it now. We'll talk.
All right, see you.
Now, Aaron, I want to turn to you because I know you are hyper structuring the series you're working on. 9 books.
I believe I have to for this one.
Right. 9 books, 3 book story arcs with the overarching larger one, and each book, of course, having 3 acts in itself.
Yes.
So, how strict are you going to be on that? Do you have room to wiggle?
I do. There's lots of wiggle room in here, and there's beats that I want to hit. And I took kind of a classic kind of setup here, and I was like, do I want to play with the So you and I had talked previously in regards to the James Bond setup,
right?
Where
which I do in Silver and Smith.
With Silver and Smith,
right?
And I looked at that one because there's various structures that you can use with kind of an adventure thing where you finish up a mission, and that leads into the story of the next one, which is the big story.
And by the way, Indiana Jones does the same thing.
It does. It does. It's a great classic adventure film story. You got a nice end early and move into the big story, and then you finish up, and then you move on to the next one because it sets the action early, and then you're like, this is what this guy can kind of do. Looks great, moves on, and then you completely change it. And you go, something different, something unexpected. With Indiana Jones, you go, he's an action hero. Wait a second, he's a professor?
Right.
Huh? And then you're back into action mode again. Great little setup. And I kind of did that with Aerie a little bit. With this one, with Icarus Black, I'm like, no, this isn't going to work right. So I changed up the formula a little bit. And I'm like, no, this is Harry Potter in space. This is the setup I did. But my leading lines are, I don't want to introduce that. I want a cold open. So I start with John Hermes, or spelled Hermes.
Right.
But I start with John Hermes, and I start with Val. They're partners.
And Val is the ship.
Yep, Valor. Val, short for Valor,
cool.
The ship. First of the ships of Valor. Federation Hospital Ship 1, Valor. John Hermes, former mariner, currently in possession of Valor. They are inside the Charlemagne asteroid field. Or mining field as it is.
Nice.
That's where I've got them at. Chapter 2 explains why they are there. Icarus Black lives in that field, specifically on Paladin Station, also where the specific asteroid that they are located at. Basically, our Hogwarts, if you will.
Very good.
The Adventure 1, Book 1, takes place in our little bubble. in our freaking closed set that is taking place here. That is our structure for book 1.
You know what? When you're done, or if you want me to interrupt now,
you can interrupt now.
A lot of people, when I'm writing, one of the biggest questions I get is world building. Now, my general advice on world building is your world, when you start, is where your characters are. If that's one room, that's the only world building you need to do, that room. If you're in a hotel or a tavern or a space station at the diner, that's all you have to build. You don't have to build the whole world on day one. Build it as your characters explore it. Now, there might be a few core things you need to lay out about your world before starting to write. You know, are you in space? Are you in a fantasy world? Are you in the modern world? Is it cyberpunk? Is it Victorian era? But you don't need to do a whole lot more than that, because I've seen so many people get caught up in their world building, they never get to writing the story.
Right, and that's one of those things that I don't want to spiral out of control. The persona non grata universe, it's there. Okay, Icarus Black takes place about 75 to 100 years prior to persona non grata.
Okay.
Val was the first of the ships to come online. It was the first one to awaken, if you will, because Heart was dry docked, was offline. Val never went offline, therefore woke up first. That's a little bit of world building, but just woke up first. So we've got them existing. As of right now, Val is about a 12-year-old boy. Important piece of the story. Identifies as male. It's an AI, doesn't matter for any other purposes. The other ships, they identify differently because of how their personalities developed.
Very good.
Heart identifies as male. Star, it has been implied that she identifies as female. Icarus, when introduced, will interact with Val exclusively. So that's what this is the box that I've created for the characters.
Right.
And here's where our adventure takes place in book 1.
Yeah.
With our Maslow's hierarchy of needs themes, and our structure revolves around that.
I want to say I like how you've named things. I like the names that you've chosen, and I wonder if you do names pop in your head first, or do you know that you'll need a name for this thing? Like what's your naming process? Because sometimes a name can be inspiring in itself and sort of.
So here's some of the things that we did. The ships of valor were named after the top 4 medals, if you will, because they were named after the medal of the Medal of Honor. I changed it to Valor. The Cross, the Navy Cross, the Army Cross, so on and so forth. But it's just named Cross.
Right.
The Bronze Star, Silver Star would be the 3rd ship. Heart, like the Purple Heart. So the top 4. So that's where they came from. So that's your ships of valor.
Very cool.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
With MailChimp, you get more than a URL. You get an all-in-one marketing platform to help drive sales. With things like data-driven recommendations and powerful automation tools. Get started today at MailChimp.com/smartmarketing. MailChimp, built for growing businesses.
With Heart, I just started with the 4th ship, and I worked my way backwards. But it was one of those, let's use Heart to start with, because it made the most sense for that story.
Yeah.
And his personality. With Airy, he's about freedom. The "Don't Tread on Me" flag is the Gadsden flag.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. His first name is Aristotle.
Oh, okay.
It's short. Airy is short for Aristotle Gadsden.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So he's the thinker.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like symbolism like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Go ahead, Travis.
Another concept is keep in mind when world building, character building your character's personality is world building. You're building your character's inner world. And instead of focusing so much on when you're planning before you start to write, world building inside your character's head is somewhat important too. And this is again something I would point at everybody who's like, I'm worried about world building. Well, worry about your character. Get to know them a little bit if you can. I often discover my characters as I write, as opposed to doing a lot of planning on them. So I can't necessarily speak to that with authority, but yeah, it's important when building those worlds to realize your character's mental state, what their wants and needs and environment internally is like.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. I think it can be a quagmire that you can get sucked into if you world build, because I think people get sucked into it because it's so much fun. And it's like laying down the board on which to play the game, and it's like, this is going to go here, this is going to go here. And then the trouble can be that you've made so much cool stuff and then you want to show it all, but it may not necessarily like exist naturally within the structure that you've set for it.
I see that in gaming worlds a lot. Whether they read a pre-written book or create their own situation, the game master becomes so enthralled in, hold on, you got to look at all the stuff I made up.
Yeah.
You lose the characters in all this other stuff. And the same for writing a book is you don't have to make it all up. It can come into play later, or it can be created later.
I had made this one shop that I was really excited that I DM'd for the first time many months ago, like before the lockdown started, and I made this little shop, and I was so excited for people to go there, and no one wanted to go there, and so I kept like giving them coupons for the shop and like being like, oh hey, there's a sale going down over here, and stuff, and then eventually finally one person wanted to go, and I was like, yes, because I had a trap set there. But it was really funny. But yeah, I think my rule for that is always like be as specific as you can. Don't let it take over, but be as specific as you can with what's in front of your characters, and give that feeling that it lives and breathes and exists beyond what you're seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
What? And see, I take a semi-opposite approach in some ways. I don't necessarily have to describe everything, because you know what a bar looks like. You know what a chair looks like.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to fill in the gaps in a lot of ways. You don't know how somebody feels in there. And you said you just recently read the first chapter of Persona Non Grata.
Mm-hmm.
If I asked you to describe Eri, could you?
No, I could not, but I could describe his jacket and his arm, and yeah,
right.
So,
those are things that he thinks are important.
Yeah, and that's sort of like, it's like the lens of the story. It's like what we're focusing on. And I mentioned in the previous episode, I like that that ape, that red
the Horan, yes,
the Horan. Yeah, I like that guy.
But he describes those, but he never really describes them. He describes it as a red quivering mass, I think.
Yeah, he was. I liked how there's like a little bit of world building within the narration that Eri's doing. He's his personality is affecting how he's describing them. Like he calls it like detestable and ugly, and then he mentions, because he seems like a technically minded guy so far, he mentions like the use of their camouflage being great on their planet, but not great anywhere else, because it's bright red, 3 shades lighter than the jacket that he was wearing. So I thought that was great. Yeah.
Stephen King, in his book on writing Memoirs of the Craft, says your readers will fill in the description themselves. If you say, this guy looked like an old boxer, everybody has a mental image. You don't have to describe it more. Just like if you mention a burly guy with a beard, who looks like he lived in the country all his life, everybody's getting a mental image. And you don't have to mention the flannel and the jeans and the, whatever else.
It's also a component of pacing because, the more fine your description, the the longer it takes for you to do that, it can slow down the story, and that can be purposeful. But like it can get to a place where like things may seem like they're moving in slow motion, right. And that can be purposeful or it might not be. And if it's not, then you want to be as specific as possible, as succinctly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where editors come in handy, or beta readers.
Yeah.
Beta readers are a godsend.
Mm-hmm.
They are a special little group. I want one. What do you feed them?
Books.
And do I have to have a basement to keep them in?
Chapters.
Chapters. Little paper. A little bit of paper.
No, but you were asking about like names and stuff.
Yeah.
So friggin' Icarus Black, I used kind of the Artemis Fowl kind of concept in the Harry Potter. I was like, you want something that's unique, but not so unique that it friggin' has a big hit. And I liked the name Icarus because it kind of fell into the same name as the Artemis thing. And I wanted something not crazy for a last name.
Yeah.
James Bond is a simple name. It's not out of this world.
Yeah.
Bond. It's just, Bond. James Bond. Black is, okay, it's simple. It's easy. It's to the point. Icarus, Black. Something a little bit unique. Something a little bit simple.
Yeah.
And that got me my protagonist.
It's a syllable. It's a syllable thing as well. You have you got 3 syllables in the first name, so you want to
exactly
invisible rhythm stuff.
And if you're writing fantasy, there's unspoken naming conventions for different races. Dwarves almost always have hard consonants, and quite often something with rock or stone or steel. Elves have long, flowing names with a lot of vowels in them. And just the name alone can give people an image and an impression of a character, as well as help form that character's personality in the long run. In Portal's Torrance the Barbarian, with a name like Torrance,
yes,
as in the word and the name, actually, both ways, or, whereas Nathan is a much more mellow name. You don't imagine Nathan being somebody who's going to be a shouter.
Well, freaking Terry Pratchett did freaking Cohen the Barbarian.
Right. And you just definitely don't imagine him as the in-your-face type guy. Definitely imagine a meeker barbarian there.
Well, he's described as kind of an older Jewish kind of guy, but he's old, but he had no things. And then when he replaced his teeth with diamonds.
Oof.
Interesting.
That sounds painful.
Yeah. In the Winslow series, Winslow refers to everyone by their last name, so I have to make sure that the last name is good with the people that at least he's going to be speaking to. So it has to sound good in dialogue and from Winslow's voice, like Chaplin, stuff like that.
That's make me looking at the names I have for my new book. Let's see, we have names like the one of the antagonists, his name is Byron Savage, and he'll be the competitor bounty hunter in book 2. Whereas the guy from the corporation that's hiring him, his name is Sevian Sims. So, and he goes by
very
Sims.
sharp sounding.
Yeah, well, it's also got a lot of sibilant noises in it.
Sibilant, so like a snake.
Little slimy, little slithery. And whereas the woman from the other corporation, from the talent agency, her name is Latasha Hood.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I like that.
A bit shady, a bit, also
undercover.
Yeah. And then
Sneaky.
I don't know where these two are going to come in, but there's siblings, Xavier Gray and Kiesia Gray. And we'll see where they come in. I just have
Xavier Gray. I like the A sound. I like that shared A sound.
Yeah.
See, I'm doing one of the guys I got coming on later on is Jordan Nasir.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's a nice gender neutral name, or at least able to cover either gender. So, yeah, it's names are important, and if they're not, then they will become important down the road because it's an identifier. I mean, how many name changes did Luke Skywalker go through?
Yeah, he was Star Killer originally, and that was a little too intense.
Yeah, well, they named every other fucking battleship after that.
They had the video game character in The Force Awakens was named Star Killer, and then later on when they wiped the expanded universe clean, and they took that name and made it the
Legends.
Oh,
yeah, they made it Legends. And
fun fact, spoiler for Mandalorian for anybody, I think they mentioned Thrawn in Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Thrawn was reintroduced in
Rebels,
so he's back in the expanded universe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Good stuff there. And I'll talk more about that afterwards. Are you guys keeping up with Mandalorian?
I don't have Disney Plus, but I hear the news and stuff.
I'm not current.
Okay, then I won't talk about anything current. Never mind. We'll wait on that one.
I don't mind spoilers.
Not on air.
When it comes
Definitely
to that,
not on air. It'd be different if we're talking about the original trilogy. Yeah, I'll spoil the hell out of that because it's 40 years old. But yeah, the ones that are out now.
His father is who?
No, that's a doctor. Different series. So what's the most important thing in structuring and planning for you guys?
Foundation. A structure's a house of cards. If you don't have the foundation, the thing ain't gonna work.
For me, it's pacing.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of do a mixture of both the planning and pantsing, and it's just a matter of like how long I've had to think about it before I have a chance to jump in and write it. But there's things that will always be spontaneous. What's
the things that you always plan?
I think there's certain like visual things. There's usually like there might be one like really important line, like a few really important lines, but otherwise all of the dialogue other than that will be like in the moment when writing it.
Right.
Everything else, the things that would come to me early would be like visual stuff. And now World of the Orb is a really visual book, which so I had a really good idea of what was going to happen across the book. Not the dialogue, but it's so imagery. It's so much about like discovering and moving through and going on this big sort of voyage and traveling across these strange lands and these different societies and stuff. But Winslow tells the story. It's a framed story.
Right to know is now following.
Things that were important though to the structuring of Winslow.
If I can interrupt real quick, I want to welcome writer Noah to the stream. We are recording a podcast, so it is sub only, but we'll be removing that as soon as we're done recording here in about 5 or 10 minutes. So hang out, we'll chit chat with you. And Wordwin says characters when I asked about the planning. Hey Gary, I'm sorry. No, go on, Michael.
Yeah, no problem. So for Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, there's a frame with every story that Winslow tells, and it's usually a frame story in the sense that Winslow's telling the story through the dialogue. And moving forward in the series, something I've been thinking about in terms of structure, like within the chapters, is what is the scenario in which he's telling this story. So like we're going to have a campfire story in book 3. We're going to have in book 2, there's an interrogation. So those become the types of frames, because it's not always just in a situation where he's telling a story where he's comfortable. So he's telling a story under duress, or it's like a flashback, blended with that. But those are the frames that I was thinking about with the story. Yeah. So different types of frames moving forward as we go through the series.
Very good. Wordwin says, and for me, the setting and the world are characters too.
That's a really good point.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think the characters is part of that foundational thing, because it's one of those, when I talk about Icarus Black or John Aramis or friggin' Val, those are foundations.
Yeah.
The Paladin mining station, it's a character. Those are things I care about. The villain or antagonist, that's something that has to exist. All of this is just the interrelationships that are happening. The situation is what they're dealing with within that structure.
Yeah, and how that type of personality deals with the conflict that creates your story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's we're about to wrap this up here in the next couple minutes. Any closing thoughts, recaps?
Oh shoot. The big one is if you're dealing with like multi-arc stuff, because you're dealing with it in Silver and Smith, you're dealing with it in Portals. He's dealing with it in Winslow because he's got to plan book 3, book 4, book 9. I'm dealing with it in the big one because I know where Icarus Black ends. I actually know, but I've got to hit a beat in 3. I've got to hit a beat in 6. Major beats. So there are some things that we've got to play along with because there's also character growth and stuff that's going to take place here.
Yeah.
And some of it's not necessarily on our main character; it's on the secondary characters that are going to be important because something's got to happen to Chaplin. Because Winslow's old. Yes, he's going to change a little along the way, but Chaplin's going to have realizations as things are going on. And that's going to be because he's our outsider looking in. He's our real narrator of this.
Mm-hmm.
Icarus, we're seeing the progress that goes on here, but the story is told through Val's eyes. In book 4, it's named Soliloquy. We're getting a Bram Stoker's Dracula feel on this one. I'm getting basically the letters of Icarus. So everything is told third person from Icarus's point of view through a lens of Val.
Interesting.
So now, right. So,
yeah.
And there's a reason for that. But, and it's one of those that an event happens, Val is not present for it, but he's getting the information. So, the world has shifted.
Yeah.
It's canted 90 degrees on its end. So, Icarus is changing, Val is changing as we've moved from one arc to the second arc.
So it's structuring character growth and development.
Huge structure, but it's also coming along with that Maslow's hierarchy of needs as we move from our basic needs into our second tier.
Right.
Yeah. And all of this is about creating an experience. And like, what's the best way to translate that experience? So, and it's neat, and because you'll end up with a totally different story if you change, like the person through which it's told, like how omniscient the narrator is, how much do we hover above here, or how much are we like right there, and then structurally, yeah. So it's all very important. It's all those foundational things, like you put it, that creates that helps build the story itself. I like everything that we talked about today. It's really interesting when you sort of like look back and then meta analyze what you've done and the puzzles that you've had to solve, like to best serve the story.
And what I'll say about structuring is I feel some is important, just so you keep your pacing and you don't wander too far from keeping that story moving. That's why, for me, structuring is important, to keep that story moving and keeping it fresh and hitting those points and those beats along the way that people unconsciously crave and look for. And also making sure it's free enough that you can break out of that when your characters do something unexpected. Now, I'm going to go and wrap this up. I want to remind everybody, if you have questions or comments and you weren't here for the live show where you could comment, you can always write us at, or email us at rightnightshow@gmail.com, spelled just like the podcast name. Also, you can send out birthday wishes to your loved ones or messages. Please keep them within terms of service. Other than that, I want to remind you guys, don't forget to support the other podcasts, such as Talk of the Tavern, which is Toast, Topics, and Tangents, and Stealing for Survival, which is our medieval fantasy apocalyptic tabletop role-playing game. It takes place in the same world as Portals and the Downfall series. Other than that, I want to thank everybody like Spacey Tracy for throwing those bits, all the subs, hosts, raids, and the folks who purchase merchandise. And if you do want to get a Right Night t-shirt or a pint glass for Talk of the Tavern, or one of our safe for work but naughty shirts or pint glasses, you can find those at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/tavern merch, or bit.ly/tavern merch 2, that's the number 2, and those are the pint glasses. Other than that, let's see, what do we got here? Thanks to our Patreon folks, such as Triple U and Ethan Strauss, for supporting us each and every month, as well as our folks on PayPal with their monthly subscription like Musical Wizardry and Berta. Okay, guys, thank you for a great show. We are out of here, and we will catch you again next time.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Right Night. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right night.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.